Going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at Max Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 203, also known this week as the trade deadline episode. We have a lot of trades to talk about. That's going to be the primary focus today.
Yeah, definitely going to be the meat and potatoes of today's episode. We got 43 different trades that we are going to go over and grade for each of the teams involved in each trade. It's going to be a girthy episode, I'll say that. There's going to be a lot of stuff, a lot of content. But we'll always get started the same way that we always do, with the opener. And my opener is going to be going to a trip that I made this past week. Went out to Wrigley for the first time in my life out in Chicago. Coolest stadium I've ever been at. The first stadium I've been at that wasn't on the exact West Coast, and probably the best one I could have chosen. And it'll probably remain at the top of my list for the ballparks that I've been to for perhaps my entire life, because it was a damn cool stadium. Seeing the history there, walking around the bleacher, or not the bleachers. I couldn't go back there because the ticket wasn't back there. Apparently you can't go where you're not sitting. But went up to the second deck, saw the views, saw how it was just like in a neighborhood, and they did a really good job around the stadium and kind of just making sure it's a cool community aspect. All the fans are super nice. But the one thing that they do not like is White Sox fans. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, my top is probably Citi Field because it was brand new when I went there. And, of course, Fenway. But I've yet to go to Wrigley, so we'll see. I'll let you know if I ever go there. You know what? For this opener, let's get crazy. 4 years to the date, I had the same exact opener. We're going to talk about skateboarding in the Olympics. It's the second ever year it's been involved. It's a cool sport. Everybody in our town, I'm sure, at least tried skateboarding, even though they probably fell lots of times and hurt themselves and stopped. But we actually have a repeat gold winner, Origami, Japanese kid. Actually, he's 24 now, I think. So time flies. But he gets the gold again. He's the kid who just soars through the air on his jumps. And then second and third, we got USA. Kind of a theme to the Olympics so far is we miss out on the gold, but silver and bronze. We got Jagger Eaton, a kid younger than me, and then Nyjah Houston, probably the most famous skateboarder in the U.S. I'm just happy it's on TV, even if people don't watch it like they watch the basketball games, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to not choose the Olympics as your opener right now with some of the stuff that's been going on. I saw there was the USA gymnastics team. We have this specific dude that does one specific thing, and so he just waits for like 2.5 hours while the rest of the team is doing this stuff, and then he comes on for this. I want to say it's like the pommel horse or whatever. It's like this giant beam, and he was, I guess, like by far the best in the world at it. So he dominated. I guess that was kind of cool because his nickname is just the Specialist, which is kind of gnarly.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, to our player, pitcher, rookie, and the week. Same thing that we always do. It's got to be a mainstay. Had a lot of great candidates for player of the week, but it's got to be one guy for this award this week.
Yeah, it's got to be Dylan Cease this week. His no-hitter in Washington was pretty awesome. Another guy joins the list, which is great. I will give an honorable mention since, like you said, so many crazy offensive numbers. Vlad Jr. found a way to stand out with a 577 batting average and 4 homers.
Yeah, there's a lot of great weeks, but nobody's going to top Dylan Cease for his no-hitter that he threw in Washington this past week. Only 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. Dominant for Dylan Cease and showing off exactly why they made that trade in this offseason. Next up, pitcher of the week is also going to be Dylan Cease, I'd imagine. But do you have any honorable mentions that you want to have or talk about?
I got some honorable mentions for rookies, but we'll leave Cease alone here for now.
Yeah, I kept it that way too. Solely Cease. Moving on to rookie of the week, though, Skyler, who'd you choose?
I think Tyler Fitzgerald deserves this one. He had a pretty crazy home run streak going there 4 days in a row, I think. And a couple pitchers turned it on too, other than Skeens, that being Kyle Harrison, Spencer Schwellenbach. But Tyler Fitzgerald, man, shout out to the Giants. Sellers. Shocker.
I went with the Tyler, but not Tyler Fitzgerald. I went with Tyler Phillips for his complete game shutout for the Phillies this past week. He's a local kid from Philly, made his first career start against the A's right before not the wild card break, the All-Star break. Comes out second half and has a complete game set piece to start his second half campaign. Only 4 strikeouts, but still, as a rookie, pretty damn cool thing to do.
That's probably why I missed him. I was sorting by Ks today.
Yeah, he was. I was like, oh crap, I forgot that was this week, and I found it all the way there at the bottom. But moving on to our trade deadline grades, we're going pretty much in chronological order. So I don't have the exact days when these trades happened, but starting off with stuff that happened last week, the first trade that we're going to talk about is a trade that took place between Arizona and Miami, where the Diamondbacks got AJ Puck, who's been good as a reliever this year. And then for Miami, they get first base, third baseman Davison De Los Santos, and outfielder Andrew Pintar. Scott, what are your grades for this trade?
Arizona's going to get a B. Obviously, we both like AJ Puck. He's a decent lefty, probably one tier above the rental guys. So I get it. Miami, though, they're going to get an A. They don't need Puck at all. They've traded everybody from their roster. They need guys who can hit right now. And De Los Santos just straight up breaks in AAA right now. Pintar looks more like a project, but he'll be in the top 30 at least, so it's a win.
Yeah, I give Arizona a B. I think AJ Puck's a good guy that they got. It's nothing really with AJ Puck specifically that knocked down the grade, especially when you look at how AJ Puck's been as a reliever this year. He came up, or not came up, but I guess he technically came up as a starter, but came into the season as a starter, had 4 games started and was terrible, 9.22 ERA. In 30 relief appearances this year, a 1.95 ERA. His Ks are down, his walks are up, but he has a track record of success that I'm pretty confident in. And I think the Diamondbacks are the exact same way because he's not going to be a free agent until after the 2026 season. Looking at what Miami got, they got perhaps the best minor league hitter moved within the entire trade deadline period with Davison De Los Santos. He immediately becomes the most exciting bat in the Miami organization as a whole, not just in the minor leagues or major leagues. He just turned 21, 60 grade power, and in the minor leagues between AA and AAA this year, 326 batting average, a 637 slug, an OPS over 1 dot, and 29 home runs. Andrew Pintar, not as familiar with, 60 grade speed, 844 OPS this season with 19 stolen bases and 9 homers, 23-year-old. I give Miami an A, though. Great job. But also Arizona doesn't get a bad grade with B because they have some organizational depth, which allowed them to give up Davison, just like having Tommy Troy, Gino Groover, and Ivan Melendez, who we've talked about a few times.
That entire AAA team rakes.
Yeah. Maybe they're using juice balls over there at Reno Aces. Who knows? That's a topic for another day. Next trade, though, Randy Arozarena goes to the Seattle Mariners for Aiden Smith, Brody Hopkins, and the legendary player to be named later.
I'm going to give Seattle a B+. I know they want the A really badly here, but Randy's having a tough year. Sometimes when the top guys aren't actually available, you just got to go get somebody you know is available. So I do like it for them. However, Tampa Bay's killing it here with this pickup. They're going to get an A also, back-to-back A's, because they're obvious sellers. They didn't have any leverage, yet they still get 2 highly respected prospects who may not need a lot of time in the minors.
Yeah. I give Seattle a B+ as well, too. Randy Arozarena, just like Puck, is not a free agent until after the 2026 season. His 113 WRC plus in 2024 isn't super flashy, but he's been good since the start of June, hitting over 290. It was just a really rough April and May for him. Looking at what Tampa Bay got, Aiden Smith, 20-year-old, ETA 2027. He's a big guy, 6'2", 60 grade run, 60 grade arm, 4th-round pick in 2023. Good OPS and 28 stolen bases in A-ball this year. So they like the athlete. That's something that's been talked about with the Rays is they're targeting athletes. This trade deadline, and they got a ton of those guys. We'll hit on all of them, of course. Next guy, Brody Hopkins, 22-year-old, fastball, 60 grade, slider, 60 grade, at 83.2 innings in A-ball. He's got 95 Ks and a 2.9 ERA. I like that player the most over Aiden Smith. Brody Hopkins seems to be the overall piece for me. I give it a B+, though, because it is Randy Arozarena that you're giving away. I can't give him higher than a B+. This is the, I guess, franchise cornerstone. If you were to place a guy, maybe it would have been Wander Franco, but we don't have to get into that either. Regardless, Randy's gone. Tampa Bay does a good job to get prospects back, though. Next up, a small one. James Paxton goes to the Boston Red Sox off of waivers, and the Dodgers get infielder Moises Bolivar.
I'm going to give Boston a C plus for picking up Paxton here because he's been there before. It's never a bad idea to have an emergency starter that isn't a quad A guy. We see it all the time with our guy Beto. Shout out to him. He throws very hard, but it's nerve wracking whenever he's up in the majors. I don't know much about our guy Bolivar going to the Dodgers here, but he's 17 and it looks like he hit pretty well in rookie ball. So I guess he has to be a higher grade, B minus, slightly better.
I like this pickup for the Red Sox. Like you said, there's familiarity there. Paxton's the guy who's pitched well for the the Dodgers this season. In 89 innings, pitched a 4.43 ERA. He's a free agent at the end of the season. And the Red Sox are a team that, starts Cooper Criswell every now and then, or starts a guy who shouldn't be a starter. Now they have a guy that they know is a starter, should be a starter, and he's going to be pitching for him every 5 days. He's pitching tonight for the Red Sox. In his first 4 innings back, he's only allowed 2 runs and has 4 strikeouts against the Mariners. So I give it an A there. As far as what the Dodgers got, I have no clue with Moises. He's only 17 years old. He's playing in the Dominican Summer League. He's not even in full season ball yet. So I give it a B. You never really know. Next up, Baltimore and Philly. They linked up a few times at the trade deadline. And this one, Baltimore gets Anthony Dominguez and our good old friend Christian Pache, and Philly gets Austin Hayes.
I'm going to give this one a double B minus. It's down years for all of these guys, and I consider Pache just the throw in, right? But specifically, Dominguez and Hayes, both guys will probably be in more high leverage situations, though, with their new teams. So the grade gets bumped up a little bit. I'm going to give them double B minus.
I give Baltimore a B plus. I think they did a good job in getting a reliever and giving up something that they have surplus of. I'll get more into that in a second. But Sir Anthony Dominguez, club option for next year. I assume he stays. His 4.5 ERA in 38 innings pitched doesn't look that great. But when you look at the advanced numbers, a 3.28 expected ERA and a 9.95 K per 9, I expect him to have a good second half. Christian Pache, with all the guys that they've added at the deadline, we'll get more into those guys, of course. Maybe he's a waiver guy in a couple weeks. Who knows? But he's just an extra outfielder at the moment for Philly. I give it a C minus. Austin Hayes is a free agent at the end of 2025. His WRC plus is at 94 this year, so he's been a below average bat. I get it's in a department of need for Philly, but is this the guy that's really the answer? And now, in hindsight, we see that they haven't made any other moves. Maybe they were, really trying to make something else, but this was just not good enough for Philly. So I give it a C minus. Next up, Seattle and Toronto, another couple of teams that linked up a few times at this trade deadline. Seattle in this trade gets Yimi Garcia, and Toronto gets Jonathan Clase, who's had a cup of coffee in the big league so far, and catcher Jacob Sharp.
I love it for Seattle. I'm going to give them an A. They should be going all in. Clase wasn't great in his cup of coffee. Bullpen never helps. Toronto also didn't make a bad decision either. I'm going to give this one also a B minus because you get a major league caliber player in Jonathan Clase, and he's obviously got a bigger ceiling than a guy who is probably not coming back in Yimi Garcia. Others have overpaid for relievers, but I've seen worse moves than this for Toronto.
Yeah, I like this move for Seattle to start off, getting Yimi Garcia 2.53 ERA in 32 innings pitched this year at 12.4 K per 9. Free agent at the end of the season, but he's been really damn good. For what they gave up, I give it an A. On Toronto's side, I say B. I look at what the Philly or the Angels got for Carlos Estevez. I think Yimi Garcia is a whole lot better. And maybe it's just the Phillies overpaying, but they got a lot more than what the Toronto Blue Jays got. Regardless, Jonathan Clase is a prospect that like only 22 years old, 70 grade run, 845 OPS, 10 homers, and 26 stolen bases in AAA this year. So I like him. Jacob Sharp, I know a little bit less about, 22 years old, a 17th rounder in 2023. So I guess we're just kind of getting new to pro ball for him as well, too. 105 WRC plus and A ball this year, and he's only 5'7". So kind of interesting there. Regardless, I give it a B for Toronto. I just think you could have gotten a bit better. Baltimore, Tampa Bay, another trade here. In this one, Baltimore gets Zach Eflin as well as cash. Tampa Bay gets Mac Horvath, who's an infielder, Jackson Bellmeister, who's a right-handed pitcher, and an outfielder in Matthew Etzel.
I really like this one for Baltimore too. I got another A that is 2 in a row. It just seems like another perfect fit. Eflin has World Series experience. They got him for pretty cheap. So I'm going to give the return for Tampa Bay a B. Baltimore definitely has more prospects of higher stature, but it's always scary when Tampa Bay gets a nasty arm like Baumeister in the building, and that's the one guy I'm focused on in this deal.
Yeah. I look at what Baltimore got first, and I think they did good with Zach Eflin. This is a guy who's a free agent after the 2025 season. He's due $17.2 million in 2025. He's got experience, like you said, in the postseason. His 4.11 ERA is hopefully going to get better because he's got an expected ERA of 3.47. He's pitched 116 innings this year. This is a guy that I trust to take the ball from me in, say, game 4 of a 7-game series, or in an emergency bullpen spot and say a game 1 or a game 2 of a series if your starter doesn't have a good start. But I wouldn't want him to go past, say, Corbin Burns, Grayson, Bradish. Those are going to be your top 3. I don't think he cracks that, and I think that's pretty clear. What Tampa Bay got, I first started looking off was Mac Horvath. I was not that impressed. I said, oh, man, this is not going to be that good of a prospect package. Then I look at Jackson Bellmeister. I see this guy's nasty. 6'4", 224, 22 years old, has 91 strikeouts and 70 2/3 innings this season. 3.06 ERA as well, too. I like him a lot. And I also like Matthew Etzel a lot as well, too. A left-handed bat, 22 years old, 50 grade hit, 65 grade run. Another athletic guy, 6'2", 211, OPS over 800, and already 41 stolen bases in between high A and double A. I like this for Tampa Bay. I just wish they got a little bit more for the Mac Horvath spot rather than, what they got there. Regardless, B+ is a good grade. Next up, smaller trade, the Mets and Seattle. The Mets get Ryan Stanek, and Seattle gets Rylan Thomas.
I can't go over a C for Ryan Stanek because he just hasn't not been very good for a couple of years now. And Seattle's going to get a slightly better grade with a B-. Rylan Thomas looks like a quad A player. But hey, you just got rid of Jonathan Clase. Here's something very cheap. A guy who could step right in that spot.
Yeah, I look at what the Mets got versus Ryan Stanek. I'd give it a B. I think Stanek's a good reliever. He's a free agent at the year's end. Maybe not this year. 4.95 ERA and 40 innings pitched, but he's always been a good strikeout guy. His expected numbers say there's going to be a better second half, and he's had a stretch of baseball in his career where he's been really dominant. So I think they did good there. Rylan Thomas, C-. I'm not a huge fan of. 24 years old, left-handed bat, only a 68 WRC plus in AAA. I mean, who cares though? Like it's Ryan Stanek. So C- for Seattle, but it's not, the end of the world or anything like that. Chicago Cubs and the Toronto Blue Jays get a trade on our next one where the Cubs get Nate Pearson, the former top prospect, and Toronto gets infielder Josh Rivera. And a great name right here in the next one, the outfielder Yohendrick Pinango.
I'm giving Chicago a D for getting Nate Pearson. I get it. You're running out of options, but come on, man. I think we're a little late on this one. Maybe a couple years ago, you would have got a better grade, but Toronto, not much better. I have these prospects as a C+. Nothing stood out when I took a look at their prospect rankings and such, but hey, they're entering rebuild mode at any second. So why not get depth?
Yeah, this trade was interesting. The Cubs, in their moves, felt like they were making moves for future years, not this upcoming year. I think Nate Pearson and his possible upside kind of tax that. He's not a free agent until the end of 2026. His ERA is terrible this year, 5.66 and 41 in the third innings. Expected numbers show he should be a bit better, and his strikeout numbers are good at 11.3 per 9 innings. But I'm not hugely in love with Nate Pearson now than I was, a couple of years ago when he was throwing 102 as a starter. So I give it a B-. For Toronto, Josh Rivera, the first guy that got back, 23 years old, 6'2", infielder, 50 grade power, 50 grade run, 55 grade fielding, according to Fangraphs. Has not been good in Double A. I'm not a huge fan of him. Yohendrick Pinango, I like him a lot more. He's a very well-rounded prospect, 22 years old, left-handed bat, 797 OPS with 9 homers and 10 stolen bases across High A and Double A this season. I think he's the main guy in the package. I give it a B because you only give up Nate Pearson. I think you got a guy in Pinango that could be a big leaguer for you, by the end of 2025. Next up, probably the biggest name traded this deadline when we look back at it. Jazz Chisholm goes to the New York Yankees, and Miami gets back middle infielder Jared Cerna, catcher Agustin Ramirez, and shortstop Abraham Ramirez.
We'll start off with the Yankees. I think this is an A because I don't care where Jazz Chisholm's playing on the field. You cannot match his energy when he's on. And right now he's on. 2-homer game. He hit one with Aaron Judge's bat. That's sick. I personally would play him in center field, but other than that, everything looks pretty good on their end. The return for Miami, I'm going to give it a B because there's some pretty highly rated prospects, but you would expect a little more for your franchise centerpiece, right?
Yeah, I first look at what the Yankees got in Jazz Chisholm Jr. He's not a free agent until the end of 2026, so you're going to have this year, next year, and the year after that with him at least, if you're the Yankees. His 107 WRC plus is solid, but what you're looking at is a defensive versatility that he's got, the ability to play outfield, the ability to play second, the ability to play third, and just kind of move wherever the Yankees need him is exactly what they need. The power speed threat is really high of Jazz Chisholm as well, too. Had 15 homers coming into the day. He just hit another one about 3 minutes ago, so he's up to 16 homers now, and now has 23 stolen bases as well, too. He's got 30-30 ability. I'm not saying he will go 30-30, but has the ability to go 30-30 and has a very good chance to be the best player moved at this deadline. With that being said, what Miami got back wasn't terrible either. Jared Cerna is not a frontline prospect or anything like that, but much like Pinango, who I talked about, who the Cubs got back for Nate Pearson, or the Toronto Blue Jays got back for Nate Pearson, he's a very well-rounded prospect. Looks like he'll be going to Double A in Miami after spending most of this year in High A. Agustin Ramirez, who is a catcher, 22 years old, 55 grade power, has an 862 OPS and 20 homers across Double A and Triple A this year. With that being said, most of the stats look way better in Double A than they do in Triple A. Maybe it's just looking at the learning curve right now. Maybe not that big of a deal. Maybe it will be. Who knows right now? And then Abraham Ramirez, shortstop, only 19 years old, left-handed bat. It has a 161 WRC plus in the complex league. I like the return, although I think New York is going to get the way more fruitful end of this. So I give New York an A and I give Miami a B. Next up, a smaller but underrated deal, in my opinion. Milwaukee gets Nick Mears from the Rockies in exchange for Brady Blaylock and Eugenier Herrera.
I'm going to give a C for both sides. That doesn't mean I don't like the move. I like that Milwaukee is taking a shot at a more established guy, and then Colorado gets the younger guys, try to mold them into something, because it doesn't really matter for Colorado whether you're a starter, reliever, stopper, opener, whatever you want to call it. They need arms. So I think it's just going to eventually even out. We'll forget about all three of these guys.
One guy that I think will not be forgotten about in this trade is Nick Mears. I think this guy is going to be a stud. The ERA is not good. 5.44 and 46 in the third innings pitched. But when you look at the expected numbers, and I hate being the guy, well, if you look at the expected numbers, he's supposed to be this. But when you're pitching in Coors, exactly. But when you're pitching in Coors, it's really hard to not look at him and be impressed when you see a guy has a 2.93 expected ERA and K per nine at 11.5, and he throws in the upper 90s most of the time. I think Nick Mears, if dialed in, can be a great back of the bullpen piece for years, because he's not a free agent until after the 2027 season. So I give Milwaukee a B+ for this. I think they did good. What Colorado got back, Brady Blaylock, the right-handed pitcher, doesn't impress me. Eugenier Herrera seems to be the bigger piece in this, only 20 years old, 68 innings pitched with 77 strikeouts and a 2.91 ERA across both A balls this year. I think they did good in the return. I think both teams benefit from this. B plus for Milwaukee and a B for Colorado. Next up, Boston and Toronto. Boston gets Danny Jansen, and Toronto gets three prospects: Edinson, Paulino, third baseman Cutter Coffee, and right-handed pitcher Gilberto Batista.
I'm going to give Boston a B minus for getting the catcher here, Danny Jansen. They really needed him. We saw what happened with Reese McGuire the other day and a couple years ago also.
I hope we didn't see that.
Yeah.
We heard about it.
Definitely heard about it. But they didn't have to give up that much. Toronto, though, I'm going to give them the slightly better B grade. Specifically, Cutter Coffee has a lot of power, but I'm not going to ask a lot from these guys. It's that rare interdivisional swap of primarily needs. I don't think Danny Jansen's going to come back to haunt Toronto or anything like that.
Yeah, this is Danny Jansen's a free agent at year's end, so it's not going to be no long-term thing unless they find an extension afterwards. And he's having a down year. As of right now, 96 WRC plus, a .7 WAR. He's been hurt in the early part, but now I believe he's up to like 65 games or something like that. So he's getting, a good amount of work in now at this point. Regardless, I give it a B minus because I think Connor Wong's done a great job behind the plate. I know you always want to have depth as a catcher, but there's a few names in here, Paulino and Coffee specifically, that I would have been okay to just hold on and not give up Danny Jansen to get those guys, or go get Danny Jansen to get those guys, whatever. You know what I'm saying? On Toronto's side, I give him a B plus. I think Paulino, 22-year-old left-handed bat shortstop, 740 OPS in AA. It was okay, but he's a good athlete, 50 grade hit, run, and arm. Cutter Coffee seems to be the best player in this trade for me. Only 20 years old, a second-round pick in 2022. 50 grade power, run, and fielding with a 60 grade arm. 784 OPS and 14 homers at high A this year. Seems to be a guy that will be a decent prospect for Toronto. Gilberto Bautista, we don't know much about yet. Only 19 years old, 20 innings pitched in the complex league. So who knows there? But I give a B plus for Toronto. I think this is another trade that they did good in. Next trade, oh my God, this one's crazy. Philadelphia gets Carlos Estevez, the closer from the Angels, but they give up two huge pitching prospects in Samuel Aldeguerri and right-handed pitcher George Klassen.
I'm going to stick with the win-win here, B plus both sides, because Carlos Estevez has been excellent for 3 years now. It's not a fluke. Those two pitchers going to LA, though, they're soaring up the prospect list. I'm sure you got the numbers, so I won't go into that here, but I'm okay with the overpay if you're going for a ring.
Yeah, that's a good point. I give Philly a B. I think Estevez is a great guy out of the back of the bullpen. 20 saves this season, 2.38 ERA, 8.5 K per nine, only a 1.3 walks per nine, so he's very much in the zone, which Philly's been looking for as well too. But they just gave up so much. The Angels get an A plus for this from me. Samuel Aldeguerri, 22 years old, lefty, 50 grade fastball, curve, slider, changeup, all 50 grades. So he's got a good 4-pitch repertoire, 109 strikeouts and 78 innings pitched, 3.23 ERA across high A and double A. I think he's definitely going to be a starter in the future for the Angels big league team. And then George Klassen, probably the biggest pitching nerd prospect this entire season. 22 years old, 70 grade fastball, 55 grade curve and slider. So he's got a very legit 3-pitch repertoire there. 89 Ks and 59 and a third innings pitched, a 1.97 ERA across both A balls this year. Probably going to be a top 100 prospect when we look at it in the Pipeline's re-ranking once we get to, I want to say August is when they do it, so probably coming out with the next week or so. George Klassen, in my opinion, one of the top 3 or 4 prospects move this entire deadline. The Angels did great here. I give it an A+. Next up, the Mets in Washington. The Mets get Jesse Winker. The Nats get Tyler Stewart.
I'm going to go with another double here with the B minuses. The Mets are weird, but we know now they're not sellers, so you have to do something. This is a perfect rental fit for them. And obviously, top 20 ranked prospect, double A. I think that's pretty close value to a rental. And, Washington loves those 6'9", tall as shit pitchers for some reason. So we'll see what happens.
Looking at Jesse Winker first, I think the Mets get an A minus. I like the bat a ton. He's a free agent at year's end, so you knew he was going to be cheap. 127 WRC plus this year, 11 homers, and 14 stolen bases this year for Jesse Winker. He had 3 stolen bases in his previous 6 years of his career.
Wow.
I don't know if that was a typo. I'm actually looking that up right now because when I was looking at it, I was like, there's no way he has 14 stolen bases, but he does. At age 30, he, I guess, got faster. I don't know what happened. But the only question I have here with him is, do you have to play him in the outfield now? Because JD Martinez is your DH. You're not putting him in the outfield. You're going to have to find a spot for Winker. And he's terrible at defense. So we'll see how they manage that. But the bat is something that you fall in love with for Jesse Winker. And him being a rental means you don't have to give up much. However, I think Washington did good on this aspect as well, too. Again, Tyler Stewart, 24 years old, 55 grade fastball slider, 90 strikeouts in 84 innings this year in Double-A. I give Washington a good grade, not really because of the prospect, but because of the scenario. They signed Jesse Winker this offseason. They kind of had the exact same mindset that they did with Yeimer Candelario for him, where just hopefully he gets better and we can chip him off and get prospects right away. And I talked about this in our preseason where they had Winker, Senzel, and Gallo come in. And I said, I guarantee you one of those guys, that's my prospect. And that's what just happened with Jesse Winker. Next up, the Padres and Tampa Bay get after it. 2 of the biggest headliners in the trade deadline moves. San Diego gets closer or late reliever, however you want to title him, Jason Adam. And Tampa Bay gets a haul back. It's Dylan Lesko, Homer Bush Jr., and JD Gonzalez.
I like this a lot for San Diego. It's a B plus though, because it's risky for sure. But I like that they are all in. We were talking about this probably last week, right? Is San Diego done? Are they going to keep going? And you called it, man. AJ Preller never sleeps. And he gave up a pretty big haul to Tampa Bay. I am going to give him a slightly worse grade B because they're really risky prospects. I like watching Dylan Lesko. I haven't watched a lot of him this year, and that's good because he's been rough this year. I don't blame Tampa Bay, though. Just getting the athletes and then Dylan Lesko, who I'm way more familiar with. I'm just not even going to attempt to go after guys that I haven't watched. So, yeah, that's it right there. San Diego got a really good reliever.
Mm-hmm. I give it a B plus for San Diego. I think they did a good job here. Free agent after the 2026 season, a 2.47 ERA in 47 innings pitched, 9.6 K per nine. Jason Adams is a good, steady, locked-in reliever. Is pretty much guaranteed there. Tampa Bay, though, I give them an A. Whether all these guys turn out into something, I probably wouldn't say that. But I think one of these guys turns into something, specifically either Lesko or Bush. First, looking at Lesko, top prospect a couple years ago, still in the top 100 right now, has had a terrible year, still got great stuff, only 20 years old, a 65 grade fastball, 70 grade changeup, about a 6.46 ERA and high A this year. I would not be shocked if Tampa Bay turns this guy into a frontline starter or a back in the bullpen guy within a couple of years. Homer Bush is a guy I'm shockingly kind of familiar with. I watched him a couple times in college when he was at Grand Canyon. Because I watched a few of those series back then, and I've seen a couple games in the minor leagues. Only 22 years old, and he is fast. 80 grade speed, a 709 OPS isn't that hot, but 43 stolen bases in high A is. I like Homer Bush. He's a good athlete. Like we talked about, Tampa Bay is going to target athleticism, and they did that perfectly here. JD Gonzalez, I don't know much about. 18-year-old catcher, left-handed bat, 552 OPS and A-ball this year. And I think my overall note is that Tampa Bay did it again. They got this guy, Jason Adam, off of waivers a couple years ago, I'd imagine, or a small trade with the Cubs, and they turn him into, top 100 prospect, a guy that has 40 stolen bag speed, and another guy as well, too. So I think Tampa Bay did another great job of just maximizing potential. Talking about maximizing potential, another Tampa Bay trade. The Cubs get Isaac Paredes, but the Tampa Bay Rays get Christopher Morel, who has already homered as a Tampa Bay Ray, Hunter Biggie, and Ty Johnson.
We'll start with Chicago. I am going to give it a pretty good grade here, A minus, because Isaac Paredes just straight up rakes, and they don't have to pay him until after 2028. Tampa Bay, I think I'm going to match it. Honestly, there's a lot of swing and miss with Christopher Morel, but you've got to love his potential, and you know Tampa Bay is going to turn him into something special. Again, I know Biggie was graded decently high on the trade value website. I checked on it a little bit, but it's not always accurate. And Ty Johnson, he's the one from Texas. No, that's Ty Madden. Whatever.
You're right. Yeah.
Just any sort of big group of arms going to Tampa Bay at one time is always scary.
Scary.
So I'm gonna have to match it.
Mm-hmm. I started off Chicago with a B, and I'll get into that grade specifically in a little bit. But I saw Paredes, the guy that you get, is a good player. Free agent, like you said, not for a long time, not until after 2027 season. He's only 25, 130 WRC plus and 16 homers this year. Was an all-star. Good player. You look at what they got or gave up to get him. Christopher Morel, also 25 years old, free agent after the 2028 season. Down here, I will say, only 92 WRC plus, but 18 homers coming in today, now has 19. Ton of potential there is the thing. Like Christopher Morel is a guy that we know, if hot, can be an all-star caliber player. Now, Hunter Biggie, the next guy that they gave up, 26 years old reliever, 0.6 ERA in AAA this year, average fastball velocity 97.8. He's going straight into that bullpen in Tampa Bay, I'd imagine. It just looks like Isaac Paredes and Nate Pearson were the guys that you gave up to get Nate Pearson and Isaac Paredes. Like, It just doesn't make sense to me in that aspect. They also give up Ty Johnson, who, like you said, is a big, hard-throwing right-hander that's scary when in Toronto, or not Toronto's, in Tampa Bay's hands. So I gave Tampa Bay an A. I think it's a unique call because you're not really going for long-term prospects here. You get some big league-ready talent. But Tampa Bay did a great job of recycling Isaac Paredes into guys that they can use and turn good into their system.
It's a good point. These are two teams that haven't necessarily gotten a lot of free agents, so the recycling just makes sense here.
Mm-hmm. Next up, smaller trade. Carson Kelly goes to Texas for Liam Hicks and Tyler Owens.
I think we got double C's here. Carson Kelly is a major need. Texas is one of those teams that's just been destroyed by injuries, specifically at catcher. And Detroit gets rid of a guy who wasn't coming back here. So I'm okay with it. C's.
Yeah, Carson Kelly's an interesting spot, but I think Texas handled their catching inability to hit this year perfectly by getting a guy who's a free agent at the year's end, has been slightly above average in 203 plate appearances, and they didn't give up a ton. I give it a B plus there. For what Detroit got back, Liam Hicks, solid hitting catcher in Double A right now, who doesn't strike out much, and Tyler Owens, who's been good as a reliever, 23 years old in Double A this year. I give it a B plus as well too. So good trade all around. It's not going to, make any crazy moves or anything like that. Not going to win you a World Series, but it is going to help you get better on both sides. Kansas City and Texas in this trade. Michael Lorenzen goes to Kansas City, and Texas gets Walter Pennington.
I'm a big Michael Lorenzen guy. We've talked about it a lot, so I have to give him an A because it's another guy, whether he's starting or out of the pen, just gives you so much more room for error in a playoff series. I don't know much about Walter Pennington. He was a guy I had to Google a couple times, but I have a C plus, a lefty with potential, but he's already 26.
Yeah, starting off with Michael Lorenzen, I completely actually forgot to grade this trade looking at it. I just have all my notes down. I didn't grade it, so I guess we'll do it as we go. Michael Lorenzen, free agent, year's end, good innings eater. The 100+ innings already this year, 3.81 ERA. I think Kansas City got a guy that they can throw in the 4 or 5 spot in the rotation because we know, 1 through 3 is already kind of taken. I'd be fine with. So I give it I'll go B plus there. Walter Pennington, I think, is a guy who's going to become a good reliever, though, for Texas. He's 26 years old, has a 2.26 ERA in 59 and 2/3 innings this year with a strikeout rate at 11.9 per 9 innings right now. I think he ends up being a good lefty for Texas, and I think that's something that Kansas City, if they don't make the playoffs this year, is going to be like, damn, we wouldn't have had to trade for a guy in coming years if we just held on to this guy. So I give, I'll change my grade. I give Kansas City a B minus because I still like Lorenzen, but I give Texas a B plus because they have the starting depth there to give up. The Reds going to be okay. Small trade here, waiver trade. Cincinnati gets Ty France, and Seattle gets Andrew Salcedo.
I think Cincinnati gets at least a C+ here because we know Ty France is a good player. He's far above league average when we're looking at WAR and OPS plus and such. The other guy, though, Salcedo, I had a hard time trying to find him, but when I did, I found that he had under 200 for his career. So I'm going to have to give him a D+, even though he's young.
This trade doesn't really excite me on either end. Ty France is probably the most boring player in the big leagues to me. Free agent year's end, 95 WRC plus this year. He's been kind of underwhelming for Seattle, but it's always kind of felt like, okay, when is he gonna, do his thing? I don't think it's gonna happen with Cincinnati, so I give it a C. Andrew Salcedo, only 7 games in A ball this year, 21-year-old catcher. I also give a C because C is the name of his position, which is catcher. Right. So works out well there. Fun trade on the next one, though. It is Boston and Pittsburgh, where Boston gets Quinn Priester, former top prospect, and Pittsburgh gets Nick York.
Yeah, this makes sense for Pittsburgh because they don't really need Quinn Priester to keep developing. They got guys that are ready to go. And Boston, they have so many utility guys that I even forgot about Nick York before this trade this season. So I think they both get B+. I still believe in both prospects. They just maybe needed a change of scenery here.
Yeah, I like this trade for both teams. I think they both addressed needs when looking at the other team's surpluses. Quinn Priester first, I like a little bit less. I don't think there's as big as upside as there was for him. A 5.04 ERA and 44 innings at the big league level this year, 33 innings in AAA. His K/9 at the big league level is only 6.25. That's not something I really like from a starter or any pitcher, regardless, but it shows more as a starter that you struggle as a reliever if you were to do that as well, too. So I give it a B- because there is still some prospect value there, though. Nick York, I like. I give a B+. 22 years old, hits, power guy over fielding at the second base position. 785 OPS has been relatively consistent in the minor leagues as well, too. 10 homers, 14 stolen bases across AA and AAA. I expect him to probably get the call next year would be my guess. So I give it a B+. Fun prospect trade, though, is what we always like to see. Really fun thing as well, too, is 3-team trades, and we got a doozy of one here. Starting off with St. Louis, where they get Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham. The Dodgers get Tommy Edman, who has not played this year, Michael Kopech, and Oliver Gonzalez. And the Chicago White Sox get Miguel Vargas, Harold Perez, and Alexander Albertus.
We'll start off with St. Louis at the top with a B+. They look like the early winners so far. You need a lot of depth when you're working with an old roster. And, Fetty's already starting on Friday, and Tommy Pham is kind of a consolation prize, but still having a great season. We'll jump down to the Dodgers with Tommy Edman, Kopech, and Gonzalez. They're going to get a slightly worse B. You know what you're getting in Tommy Edman. It's no surprise they need infield help. Kopech could always turn out to be something. I think the White Sox got hoed here a little bit. It's always tough when you have no leverage at the deadline, and this is going to be a really ugly decade because, in my opinion, the Dodgers would have just kept Vargas if they had any hope in them.
No. I'm going to go backwards in this one. I'm going to start off with my overall note and then go team by team. Okay. Cardinals seem like the sure winner. Chicago goes very young on the prospect return except for Vargas, and the Dodgers take the high upside guys in Edman. So starting back, going to St. Louis, Eric Fetty's been ridiculously good this year for the Chicago White Sox. And for how good he's been, especially with another year on his contract, and I believe he's only making like $5 million, they should have got a ton back for this guy, and they did not. And they didn't get a single prospect from St. Louis, which is just hilarious. All the prospects came from the Dodgers. Tommy Pham also goes to St. Louis, same place that he started his career. Solid bat, nothing too crazy. Maybe throw on the bench, maybe, fourth outfielder type guy. I like it a ton to just kind of help their team. So St. Louis gets an A. What the Dodgers do is they get a B+. Tommy Edman is a guy who has shown defensive versatility, and not just defensive versatility, but great defender regardless. Anywhere you put him in the Dodgers, absolutely love having guys like that. They got another guy like that later on that we'll talk about. He's a free agent after 2025, but he hasn't played all year is the only problem. He'll be back soon, but when you're looking at a player who hasn't really played in a year, it's kind of tough to see how he's going to be. Michael Kopech, this is a very much high upside guy. If he can find a way to find the strike zone consistently, he's going to be dominant. 4.7 ERA this year, free agent after 2025. I expect to be better next year than this year. A middle relief guy for the Dodgers. Oliver Gonzalez, 17-year-old dude from the Dominican Summer League. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Not even going to try. The Chicago White Sox, so Miguel Vargas, you got to get somebody who's going to play for you immediately, right? That's just what you got to do to kind of save face a little bit. Miguel Vargas now gets some time to play, which is pretty damn cool. He's been always struggling to get some playing time over there for the Dodgers. Only 24 years old, free agent after the end of the 2029 season. 108 WRC plus this year. So maybe he, comes into his own for the White Sox. Infield, outfield, versatility is good. Gerald Perez is a prospect that I actually really like. Only 19 years old, 800 OPS, 10 homers, and A-ball this year. He's a very well-rounded prospect, much like Pinango that I talked about earlier. I like him. Alexander Albertus, also 19 years old, 55 grade hit and 55 grade arm, 829 OPS, mostly in the complex league. So how much can we really talk about that? Who knows? But he's okay. I give us a C for the White Sox. You should have gotten more. I bump it up a little bit because I like Perez and I think Vargas will be decent. But man, they got what for Trevor Rogers, and you only got that much for Eric Fetty? Like, come on now. That's the craziest thing to me. Next one, Justin Turner goes to Seattle for potentially the best name of this trade deadline, RJ Shrek.
Yeah, Seattle's going to get a solid B here from me because Justin Turner still mashes lefties. Ty France is gone, and they just filled a massive need. Get ready for the playoff run. Toronto, RJ Shrek, awesome name, rough numbers in AA. It's going to be a D+ from me, unfortunately.
Seattle, I give a B. I think Justin Turner is a solid bat, 110 on WRC+. He's not going to blow you away. He's going to hit for contact, have a little bit of pop in him, and just be a good hitter for you. A middle to back end of the type of lineup guy for you. And I think it's a good job there, so I give it a B. Toronto, I give it a B+ because I like when teams sign guys on rentals and are able to flip them into guys that could potentially be something later. And RJ Shrek kind of fits that model. 24 years old, left-handed bat, 12 homers this year across high A and double A. You never know. But I think they did good there to at least get somebody back for him, so I give it a B+. Next up, Lane Thomas goes to the Cleveland Guardians for Alex Clemmie, Rafael Ramirez Jr., cool name. His father is Rafael Ramirez, of course, who used to play in the big leagues, and Jose Tena, who made his big league debut for the Guardians last year, I believe.
Yeah, this is a funny one because we actually joked about this last week when we were doing our free agent draft. I think this is a perfect fit for Cleveland. I'm going to give it a B+, but it might have been a little bit of an overpay. Washington's going to get an A- from me. I'm glad they understand things are not going to plan here. They had to make a move. Clemney just got drafted out of high school. Looks like he could be the next great lefty. So that's what does it for me.
I'll start off with Cleveland. A or A+, whatever you want to give him. Lane Thomas is going to fit this lineup perfectly, man. Free agent after 2025, so you got that for next year as well, too. 108 WRC+ with 8 homers and 28 stolen bases this year at the big league level, of course. Hit 28 homers last year for the Nationals, so he's got that 2020, 25-25 potential in Cleveland, which I like a ton in that lineup. I think it fits perfectly. Washington, Alex Clemmie, you said you like. I like him as well, too. Big lefty, only 19 years old, 70 grade fastball, 97 Ks in 69 in the third innings, an A-ball that this year has been good. Rafael Ramirez hasn't been able to hit an A-ball, but he's only 19. Jose Tena, solid player in AAA this year, 116 WRC+ left-handed bat, only 23 years old. Fringe big leaguer probably for the Nationals for the next, generation, whatever you want to do there. But not outside of Clemmy, not really a ton of guys I like. So I give it a B plus. I think both teams did good though in this deal. I think they both got aspects that can really help them in the long run. Next up, Houston, Toronto, fun one here. Yusei Kikuchi goes to the Astros for Jake Bloss, who was a pick last year. Joey Loperfido and Billy Wagner's son, actually, Will Wagner.
We'll start with Houston. I'm going to give it a C plus. Yes, Houston's playing better. Yes, they needed a starter, but they're not going to win the World Series this year. And I guarantee you they gave up too much. Toronto is going to get a B plus. None of these guys are going to blow you out of the water, but Bloss and Loperfido, am I saying that one right?
Loperfido, yeah.
They're well-known guys. And for a rental pitcher who's not having a great year, good work to rebuild the farm, Toronto.
Yeah, I'll start off with Houston. I give them a B minus. They gave up a ton. However, I do like Yusei Kikuchi. I think, again, one of those dudes where the expected numbers outplay the current numbers. So I think he's going to have a good second half. But I do not think he's worth Jake Bloss, Joey Loperfido, and Will Wagner. Jake Bloss was a guy who was third-round pick last year, I want to say, only 23 years old, a 1.64 ERA in the minors this year. From high A to triple A, has also made 3 starts at the big league level, I want to say, and 11.2 innings pitched. Hasn't been great there, but still a guy who is liked by tons as far as the MLB nerd community goes. Joey Loperfido, 25 years old, a big, powerful left-handed bat. Problem right now is strikeouts, 36.4 K rate in 118 plate appearances this year at the big league level, but has 13 homers at the triple A level. Could be quad A, unfortunately, but I do like him to be an impact player at some point in his career in Toronto, as well as his ability to play all 3 outfield spots. Will Wagner, 26 years old, has not appeared in the big leagues yet. However, 55 grade hit is good, left-handed bat, and an 853 OPS in AAA with 5 homers is good as well too. I give it an A minus. Toronto did another good job of getting stuff back for guys that they traded. So good job there. Next trade, Ahmed Rosario goes to the Dodgers for the second straight year for Michael Flynn.
Yeah, these are going to be C pluses for me. I don't know who P. Michael Flynn is, but I do know that the Dodgers needed a shortstop, and Tampa Bay loves their pitchers, especially with crazy names.
Ahmed Rosario, free agent at year's end. Good bat in Toronto, or not Toronto, in Tampa Bay, hitting over 300. Defensive versatility, ability to play second, shortstop, and right field so far this year. Talked about how that's something that the Dodgers love. I think they did a good job with that there. Michael Flynn, 27 years old, right-handed pitcher, 12.4 K per nine. Pitcher? Yes. Yeah, I don't know.
Is it like a hyphenated? I didn't even try to look him up. My bad.
But yeah, he's nothing too crazy. That's kind of what is expected with Ahmed Rosario. But now he's forever P. Michael Flynn if he ever gets to the big leagues.
My bad.
No, Milwaukee, Cincinnati in our next trade. Milwaukee gets Cincinnati's opening day starter, Frankie Montas, for Joey Weimer and Jacob Junis.
I'm going to give Milwaukee a very cautious C plus because it's a very nasty arm going to the Milwaukee Arms Factory. I'll come back to Montas later. Let's go to Cincinnati real quick. Slightly worse C. Joey Weimer hasn't been great, and Junis included makes me think that they're trying to screw over their division rivals with that Montas contract. So that's why I have it very close and not very highly graded. Probably not a lot of war coming from this trade.
Yeah, I don't love this trade on each side. Frankie Montas has a mutual option in 2025. ERA over 5 this year. I don't think he's the guy for you anymore. If this was 3 years ago, I would have liked it. I just don't know how much Frankie's got in the tank at this point. So I give it a C plus. For Cincinnati, a B minus. I've never liked Joey Weimer. I don't think he's going to be a productive big league player. And then Jacob Junis, I do like. However, he's a bit weird this year. He hasn't really pitched in a consistent role, but still a 2.42 ERA in 26 innings pitched. But the expected ERA is a whole lot higher at 4.84, so maybe some regression there. I give it a B minus. Not a good trade by both teams, I'd say. Atlanta, San Francisco, and this next one, the Braves get former World Series MVP Jorge Soler, as well as another guy that was on that 2021 World Series team, Luke Jackson. San Francisco gets Tyler Matzeg and infielder Sabin Ceballos.
Before I get into my grade here, I want to let you know Jackson Holiday just got called up again. Pretty cool.
Yep. I was going to get there when
Yeah.
we get to the Connor retrade. But
okay, we'll get back into that later because obviously there's a reason he was traded. But this trade, we'll start off with the Giants. I'm going to give them a solid B for the cap dump. Maybe this allows them to go after Vlad or Pete Alonso in the off season now, not at the deadline while they're struggling a bit. And Atlanta, I do love the Soler fit, and obviously Luke Jackson coming back. I'm going to give them a B minus because of the contracts. But getting predictable guys in an unpredictable situation is pretty good for Atlanta, considering the circumstances here.
Yeah, it's time to let you know that Jazz Chisholm has homered again. So that makes 2 homers during the podcast today.
Wow.
Paying off pretty well early on for the
and
Yankees.
A number 1 prospect coming up.
Moving on, though, to Jorge Soler. I like Jorge Soler. He's been good since the start of June. 115 WRC plus this year, 12 homers. Free agent after the 2026 season. So that's maybe the bit of the kicker there. But he's good. Luke Jackson, not a fan. 5.4 ERA this year. I still think Atlanta gets a B, though, because Soler is reasonable. I'm just curious how to see how they use him after this one season span. The Giants, Tyler Matzeg, 9 ERA this year in 10 innings. Club option next year. I don't know exactly how they're going to navigate that. Sabin Ceballos looks decent. 21-year-old infielder. 50 grade power and 60 grade fielding. According to Fangraphs, he's 6'3", 225. Solid numbers in high A this year. Seems to be a decent guy. Maybe the big leagues in a few years for him. The Yankees, or I give it a B for that, for the Giants. Pretty even all around there. The Yankees and the Cubs for our next one. Mark Leiter Jr. goes to the Yankees for infielder Ben Cowles and right-handed pitcher Jack Neely.
The Yankees are going to get a B here for the pen help. It's always good. And Leiter's having a great season. I was surprised when I've been checking in this month because obviously the Cubs are possible sellers. The return, a C. I don't know a whole lot about these guys.
Yeah, I'll start off with Mark Leiter Jr. I give it a B+. He's one of those dudes that the Yankees can probably turn into something a bit better than what his current actual numbers are because the expected numbers are so much better. Free agent after the 2026 season and a 13.1 K per nine this year for the Cubs, which is a big kicker there. The Cubs get back 2 decent prospects, I'd say. Ben Cowles, infielder, 24 years old, 50 grade, hit, run, arm, fielding, pretty well-rounded, 9 homers, 14 stolen bases, and an 848 OPS in AA this year. I like Jack Neely, 6'8", 24 years old, reliever, 60 grade fastball, 70 grade slider, 63 Ks in 41 innings this year across AA and AAA. Seems to be a guy who's going to be a bullpen arm for them in the future. Don't forget, they also traded for Nate Pearson. So just what are we doing here? Like, make moves that are consistent, Chicago. I'm not really – I don't think they'd help themselves that much is what I'm trying to say. But in this trade specifically, they did good. I give it an A-. Boston, Cincinnati. Lucas Sim goes to Boston. Cincinnati gets Ovis Portes. Weird name.
Yeah, I did look at the numbers here trying to decide who was the winner. I couldn't find a winner. So they're both going to get C's because they've both been producing about 0 WAR this year.
Yeah. I start off with Lucas Sims, solid reliever, nothing too crazy, middle of the line guy. I give a B+ there because I think he, if you're a middle line guy on a contending team, you're good. Ovis Portes, don't know too much about, only an A-ball, 19 years old. Good K numbers though, so I'll give it a B. And that's kind of just my wash there. Baltimore, Miami on our next one. This one's a big one. Baltimore gets Trevor Rogers, who's a free agent after the 2026 season. But Miami gets Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers. The ripple effect, like kind of talked about, Jackson Holiday is going to be the guy coming up to replace Cotton Norby on the big league roster. So good to see that. But that's kind of where we're at on that one. Skyler, what do you think?
I still like it for Baltimore, even though it's going to be a B. Probably the best lefty available since Crochet and Skubal actually weren't available. So I like the idea. You knew they were going after a lefty. You just decided to screw me on my free agent draft. So thanks, Baltimore. Miami, though, it's going to be an A-. These are two guys who we joked about it with De Los Santos a little, but it's not really a joke anymore. These guys might be hitting 2, 3, and 4 by the end of the year. So they finally get their opportunity. I'm excited to see what these guys can do.
Yeah, I'll start off with Trevor Rogers and the Baltimore, where they get a C. Former Rookie of the Year, has the potential, but just doesn't really seem like he's going to come into that. And for what they gave up, it's way too much. Not a huge fan there. I give a C. Miami, A+. Connor Norby, solid prospect, 24 years old, good hitting numbers in not double A, or did a double A couple years ago, but in triple A in the MLB this year. 16 homers, 13 stolen bases in AAA, which is good. Carl Stowers, a good bat in AAA as well as the big leagues. Left-handed bat, 26 years old. Like you said, these are going to be the guys somewhere in that lineup, probably in the higher spots, considering Miami, that should be there for the next 5 to 6 years if they don't trade on in deadline in 2 years. So I like the move a lot by the Marlins. Next up, kind of just Arizona's perspective on this because it was a cash trade, kind of weird. But Arizona gets Josh Bell from Miami.
I think this has got to be a C because I think he's probably gone when Christian Walker gets back. But you never know. He's like your heat check equivalent of a baseball player, right, of a power hitter. So you never know. He could catch fire. I'm okay with this for Miami. I'm going to give it a B+, actually, because getting a big contract like that off the books is sometimes more valuable than getting some prospects.
Yeah, I like Josh Bell to Arizona. Christian Walker injuries last night is kind of what provoked this. But Josh Bell's been good over the past couple of weeks, and I think throwing a hot bat in there, even if it is just for the Christian Walker time that he's gone, can really be helpful when it's a race as tight as it is in the NL wild card right now. So I give it a B+. I think they did good, and Miami did good as well too to just get this contract off the books. This wasn't a contract they signed; it was something that Cleveland did, and then they got last year for a contract that they also got off the books in Gene Segura. Weird moves all around with Josh Bell the last couple of spots, but he was also in the Soto deal, which is crazy as well too. Oh my gosh! Regardless. Josh Bell gets moved. Good job by both sides. I give it a B for Miami because, how much can you really give them? Next trade, Cleveland gets Alex Cobb, and the Giants get left-handed pitcher Jacob Bresnahan. It's got to be Bresnahan. And the PTBNL, of course.
Yeah, another C here for me with Cleveland because Alex Cobb has not pitched very many innings over the past couple of years. This might be risky. The Giants are going to get the slightly better B grade. Bresnahan isn't ranked. At least he wasn't when I checked him, but he is right out of high school. So I think there is a clear winner here if Alex Cobb doesn't finish the year strong or at all.
I like Alex Cobb. I think his stuff is nasty. If he can get on the big league mound consistently for Cleveland in the second half, this could be a really underrated trade. As of right now, I give it a B+ because he's a free agent at year's end and he hasn't pitched this entire year. I've heard that he is expected to make one start for Cleveland in the minor leagues and then come up to the big league level because he's in the middle of a rehab assignment right now. The durability of the arm is something that you're curious about. Of course, coming off of an injury, he did pitch 151 innings last year to a good 3.87 ERA. Maybe he's able to pitch, August and September for this Cleveland team and be really good. But as of right now, I don't know. But I'm banking on it being better than expected. And so I give it a B+. But San Francisco gets back in Jacob Bresnahan, 19-year-old, like you talked about, super young, 12.3 K per night at the Complex League, who just went to A-ball. B-. I don't know too much about this guy, but I think it would have done the Giants better to have Cobb on their team than Bresnahan. Moving on, Kansas City and Oakland for our next trade. Finally, an A's trade that we get to talk about. Lucas Erceg goes to Kansas City for Mason Barnett, who's a right-handed pitcher, Will Klein, a reliever, and Jared Dickey, a left-handed bat.
Kansas City's going to get a B plus from me. This guy is awesome, and he has a lot of control. I enjoyed watching him. A lot of sinkers, former infielder. So that part's pretty cool. We'll get to the Ace part. I'm going to have it as a B. It's not Oakland's fault. I saw some tweets like, "Oh, Forrest is selling. This is ridiculous." It's like, dude, the reliever market is hot right now. In my book, this is a win because a really rough A's pitching staff is getting two pretty good arms, and then your AA throw-in that's in every three prospect trade, right? So I'm excited to see what our new reliever Will Klein has, and hey, Barnett is very highly ranked, but don't know much about him.
Yeah, I'll look at Lucas Erceg first. Free agent after the 2029 season. This guy's a stud. Stuff is nasty. When he's on, but when he's off, he's off. Is something as well too. Like he is either an ERA of 1 for a month or an ERA of 10 for a month because he's just walking guys. But regardless, I think Kansas City benefits from this a ton and could eventually even be the closer by the end of the year for Kansas City. I give him an A minus. What Oakland got back was pretty good, though. I like Mason Barnett, 23 years old, 55 grade slider, changeup and fastball, 109 strikeouts and 91 innings this year in AA. Number 4 prospect from Kansas City. I think they did good on him. Will Klein, a reliever that comes back, will be thrown into the bullpen immediately as soon as tomorrow is what we've heard. 24 years old, 37 strikeouts and 37 innings in AAA. Hopefully he turns into something. And Jared Dickey, 22 years old, left-handed bat, 127 WRC plus and high A ball this year, 9 homers, 8 stolen bases. Left-handed outfielder bats, like, why not get it with someone like that? Because if they turn into somebody good, that's a commodity to have. So B plus for Oakland, A minus for Kansas City. I think both teams came out productive, though. Addressed the needs that they had with needing some minor league pitching. Kansas City again on this next one. 2 teams are actually playing right now: the White Sox and Kansas City. Kansas City gets Paul DeJong, and the White Sox get Harold Rosado. Gerald. I don't know if it's Gerald or Harold. I don't know exactly how they say it, but Rosado.
I have a B minus for both sides here. I don't think Kansas City is going to miss their low A reliever because they just got Lucas Erceg, and DeJong was a cheap available bat for Kansas City. I think this is a very reasonable move for both sides.
Yeah, I like the value from Kansas City. They get Paul DeJong, who's got a club option for next year and has 18 homers this year. 95 WRC plus isn't great, but the pop is what you like for Kansas City, especially now, going into these summer months that comes pretty easy to hit in Kansas City. So I give it a B plus for them. I think he's, I'm not going to slot him third or anything like that, but if you have this guy hitting 6th instead of, say, Garrett Hampson or something like that, or Adam Frazier, like, it's going to work out for you pretty well there. Chicago, the guy that got back, I mean, how much can we say about an A reliever? Like, he's I give it a B, give him the benefit of the doubt, even though I probably shouldn't because it's the White Sox. Regardless, good trade for both teams, I'd say. Oakland and the Mets on our next one. The Mets get A's legend Paul Blackburn, and the A's get Cade Morris, a 22-year-old starter.
I love Paul Blackburn too, but he has been horrific away from the Coliseum these past couple of years. I'm going to give it only a C, and our return actually a C plus because Cade Morris is at least a pitcher that's going to be ranked in our top 20. It's hard to complain when Paul Blackburn has lost basically all of his value over the years, even though I loved watching him pitch.
Yeah, I give the Mets a C. I'll start off with Paul Blackburn. I love Paul Blackburn specifically, but his ability to pitch in New York probably not going to be the greatest because he's always been one of those guys that just does better when you're pitching in Oakland due to how the ballpark is and how he's become used to it over the 7 years that he's been with the A's team. Regardless, a 5-starter for you is kind of cool. You're now back in the rotation with Sean Manaea, which is kind of cool as well too. But a C for the Mets. The guy that the A's got, Cade Morris, used to or used to pitch at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno. Actually, really good friends with the Gebs is something I've learned. So that's kind of cool there.
Yeah.
A friend of a friend, I guess is what I'll call him, Cade Morris. 22 years old, 50 grade fastball, slider, changeup, 95 strikeouts in 92 and a third innings pitched across high A and low A, 3.51 ERA. The MLB pitching nerds kind guys were, I guess, to say that they were. He's graded higher than what his MLB pipeline stuff is right now. Is what they're trying to say, and so I think the A's did good. I think Paul Blackburn's not going to be a long-term guy for the A's, so it's valuable to move him now. And I think they did good in getting Cade Morris back, a third-round pick just a couple years ago, so I give it a B. Next up, the Padres in Miami, two reoccurring teams in this deadline. Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing going to the Padres for Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, Graham Pauley, and Jay Beashers.
I'm going to give San Diego a B+ for going all in here, getting one of the best lefties in the league. Obviously, a pretty hot commodity. Lots of teams in on him, I'm sure. But Miami's going to get a better grade. They get an A. You got to love those big trades where the selling team gets to choose from a group like this. So you can go back in a couple years and be like, how did they not take this guy? Was Salas available? We'll never know. But Miami's got so many pitching injuries that I love this. I love getting Snelling and Mazur. I've seen the name, but I've never heard an announcer say it. I've never watched him live. But yeah.
It could be Mazur. I don't know exactly how to say it, but I am familiar with his ability. We'll start off from the other side, San Diego. I think they did great here. I know it's a ton to give up, but Tanner Scott is one of the best relievers in all of baseball. 1.18 ERA in 45 innings pitched this year, 10.5 K per nine. He's a lefty, free agent year's end, but regardless, I think he's good. Brian Hoeing, good numbers, bad expected numbers. I'll just say that about him. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe just a long relief type guy. But I think Tanner Scott, of course, is the centerpiece of this and is a really damn good pitcher. So I give San Diego an A because of the guys that they give up. San Diego just turns them into new guys next year. That's consistently what they do. Robbie Snelling was really, really good in 2023. He had a 1.84 ERA in 103.2 innings with 118 strikeouts and only 34 walks. This year, in 30 less innings, he has one less walk. So that's been the problem for him. He's got an ERA over 6 in Double-A this season, but only 20 years old. Miami obviously loves the ability that he could get back to what he was in last year's campaign and become a frontline starter for them. Adam Mazur, only 23 years old, 60 grade slider, 60 grade control, was terrible in the big leagues this year. Absolutely terrible. There's been some concern if he has the ability to stay as a starter long term. I'm not really too sure there. But regardless, still got potentially some upside. Graham Pauley, I don't think has a ton of upside, to be honest with you. Left-handed bat, though, only 23 years old, 55 grade hit, 50 grade power, 8 homers in AAA this year, but only 4 for 32 in the big leagues. He was actually on the big league opening day roster for the Padres to start off the season, which is kind of cool. I want to say he played in Korea in those games, too, when they were doing that. I don't like him specifically. Jay Beashers, whatever, 50 grade power, 50 grade hit, 750 OPS in both the A balls this year, only 22 years old. I think this Miami's one of their worst trades. I'll say that. I think there's a lot of other packages that they could have got back from other teams that would have been good. However, that doesn't mean it's a bad trade because Miami made a ton of really good trades this year. I just give it a B-. I'm not in love with the guys that they got back from San Diego on this. Pittsburgh, Miami. In this trade, Pittsburgh gets Brian De La Cruz and Miami gets Jun Seok Shim and Garrett Forrester.
I got Pittsburgh with a B+ for bringing in Brian De La Cruz.
I know you like him.
He's looked really good, finally, right? It's like every year we've been waiting for him to take this next jump. So why not take a shot at him? They're in the hunt. Corner outfield is a mystery. So he's got a spot for sure. And Miami, I'm actually going to give him a B on this one too. I think Shim looks really good for being only 20. So he kind of saves this one because I probably wouldn't trade away Brian De La Cruz. but they are in tank mode, so you can't blame them, right?
Yeah, I'll start off with Brian De La Cruz as well, too. Free agent after the 2027 season, so there's a lot of control there. 18 homers this year. Bad defender is the only thing I'm worried about because who's going to DH for them? Rowdy's been pretty consistently first base and off there. McCutcheon's pretty much DH only at this point. Brian Reynolds isn't that good in the field. So how they manage that, I'm not too sure, but I think the bat is something that you like. So I give it a B plus there. Miami getting back. I don't know too much about Shim and I don't know too much about Forrester, but I know that there aren't my favorite prospects. I'll say that. Brian De La Cruz, a guy that has a lot of control. I think you could have waited another year for him to really turn into something a bit more or still hold on to him. So I'm not a huge fan of this trade for Miami. I give it a C. Next up, Pittsburgh trades for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. And Toronto gets outfielder Charles McAdoo. That name sounded familiar for me, and that's because I played against him in high school. He went to De La Salle, went to San Jose State after that, now has long dreads and a big beard, looks way different than I remember him, but was a pretty good third baseman at De La Salle, I'll say that.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to give Kiner-Falefa and Pittsburgh a C here. I guess you could say it's a nice depth piece. I'm not too familiar with his contract, but I'm sure it's not for very long. Toronto, I don't mind Charles McAdoo either. B minus, slightly better grade. He's hitting well for his first month ever in Double-A, and that's all you can ask for from a prospect.
Yeah, I'll start with IKF. I think this is a good move by Pittsburgh because it just gives them the ability to play him at second, play him at short, play him at third, play him in the outfield, play him wherever. He used to play catcher as well, too. Don't think he's going to be doing that, but I think IKF gives a ton of defensive versatility, and he was hitting good this year for the Toronto Blue Jays. The only thing is that he's just coming off of injury. He's going to go on a rehab assignment apparently and then go to the Pirates team. So he's going to do it in the Pirates minor leagues, of course, but I get what I'm saying there. Free agent in 2020, at the end of 2025, so he's got next year as well too. Regardless, solid move. I think he helps the team in a whole bunch of ways, especially winning teams. And I think that's where Pittsburgh's trying to go. So I give it a B plus there. However, I don't like giving up Charles McAdoo. 22 years old, 50 grade hit, 50 grade arm, 932 OPS with 14 homers and 17 stolen bases across high A and double A this year. He was a guy who was about to jump up really high in their midseason re-rank, according to, I want to say it's Morosi or somebody that came in like that was figured that out. So Toronto gets a good prospect there. I give it an A. I think both teams did good here, getting what they need and attacking some good spots. And hopefully McAdoo turns into someone that is a big leaguer, which would be pretty cool. Next trade, we're getting to the trades that happened like right at the deadline. Now at this point, this one got in maybe 2 or 3 minutes before the deadline closed. And that's Jack Flaherty going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. He goes home where he went to Harvard Westlake, I want to believe, in Los Angeles. And the Detroit Tigers get back Theron Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney, who was acquired by the Dodgers last year in the offseason for Victor Gonzalez.
Nice.
Weird trade.
I have the Dodgers at an A here because Jack Flaherty has been nearly unhittable this season. I don't mind the return either. I have it as a B plus. It's probably not as much as you could have gotten from another team, but here's 2 guys with really good pop. It's not bad for a rental.
Yeah, I'll start off with Jack Flaherty. Free agent at year's end. We knew it was a rental. 2.95 ERA this year in 106 innings pitched. He's been really damn good. I give it an A plus because they didn't give up much, and then for Detroit, they didn't get enough back, in my opinion. So I give it a C plus there. Theron Lorenzo, switch hitting catcher, is kind of cool. 55 grade power and good fielding as well too. Hasn't been the greatest hitter though in high A. Maybe relying on those skills a little bit too much. Trey Sweeney, 24-year-old shortstop, left-handed bat, solid prospect, well-rounded. Probably going to be in the big leagues this year, maybe next year for the Tigers at the latest. I just think they should have gone back way more. I know it's a rental for Flaherty, but like with the
Yep.
pitching market right now, I
They gave
think the
Luzardo
A's
for a rental.
exactly. But there's other spots where this could have been a whole bunch better. So regardless, yeah, they get a grade in the C's there. Next up, smaller trade but kind of interesting. Dylan Carlson goes to the Rays for reliever Sean Armstrong.
I have double C minuses again. Guys that are just not having the best first half, and they need a change. So both these guys are going to teams of need, right? Tampa Bay just traded a Rosarena. St. Louis can always use a pen arm when you're in a tough race like the NL wild card race here. So C minuses for now. I'm sure both will get a little better.
Tampa Bay starts the reclamation process of Dylan Carlson here, who was good a couple years ago, only 25 years old, a switch hitter, but has been terrible this year. A 52 WRC plus and 138 plate appearances, terrible. It's not, slightly bad. It's really bad. However, they take the upside and they flip him for a reliever who hasn't been that good. 5.4 ERA this year and 46.2 innings pitched, free agent at year's end. Sean Armstrong's been good in years past, but maybe just not his year. Whatever kind of happens for relievers like that. However, St. Louis didn't give up much in Dylan Carlson to get him either. So I give St. Louis a B and I give Tampa Bay a B plus. Next trade, 4 more to go. We're almost getting through it. Eloy Jimenez goes to the Baltimore Orioles for left-handed pitcher Trey Magooch. I don't know, dude. This was a tough one. I'll say that.
Yeah, there's a couple names we were struggling with today. I'm going to give Baltimore a B for going after Eloy. They had to eat some money, but it's money that they had available. So it wasn't too difficult. Chicago, though, they get a C. 26-year-old prospects are a little riskier than the younger guys. But it's kind of like Pennington earlier with Texas, right? If they can turn this guy into something, then it'll all work itself out because it's a rental. It doesn't matter.
No. I'll start off with Baltimore. I think they get an A because Eloy Jimenez, when he's right, can be really damn good. And I think he could be a perfect DH there long term because he's got club options in 2025 and 2026. I think the upside's good enough to at least get it for the 2025 year and see how it goes. This year he hasn't been that good. 249 plate appearances, only 5 homers. But the big thing is, for me here at least, is that he's striking out the lowest rate of his career, 18.9%. It's always been above in the 20s. So getting that strikeout rate down a little bit can be something there. Chicago, the guy that they got, Trey Magooch, 26 years old, like you said, 60 grade slider, ERA is good in the 2s. K numbers aren't that good. Why are you trying to get this guy, Chicago? Like, he's 26. Like, put a couple things together. Go get a 19-year-old. Regardless, a C plus. I don't know. You aren't going to get much for Eloy, anyways. Yeah. Next up, the Giants get one of our favorites, Mark Canha, for Eric Silva.
The Giants are going to get a C plus because they're bringing Mark Canha back home to the Bay. And Solaire's gone. You need somebody out there. Jung-Hoo Lee's injured. Just a rough season for them. Slightly worse return for Detroit with Eric Silva, C minus, because the numbers are really rough in AA. But he's only 21. So you never know. But I think this one's going to cancel itself out too, like most of them.
Yeah. I give the Giants an A because why not? Mark Canha has the upside to be really good. We saw him there in Oakland. And there's 2 things about Oakland that are returning for him, or I guess 3 teams. He's back in the Bay Area. He's back Bob Melvin as his head coach, and he's got Matt Chapman as his third baseman again, which is pretty cool. So reunion of sorts for the A's there, although it's with one of our biggest rivals who are actually playing tonight. And I think Mark Canha could pop. And if it doesn't, who cares? Because you only gave up Eric Silva, who has been solid in AA, but nothing too crazy. Detroit gets a B minus because they got something back from him at least, and the Giants get an A. Next up, Baltimore gets Gregory Soto, the lefty, for Seth Johnson.
Baltimore's going to get a B because Gregory Soto is a nasty lefty who needs a new home. And Philly is also going to get a B because Seth Johnson looks really good when he's healthy. Maybe there's some World Series collusion going on here with Baltimore and Philly. These are some really even trades going on. I think most of them I've had split.
I think it's a bit different for me. Gregory Soto is not a guy that I'm a huge fan of, or I don't mind him specifically. But when you give up Seth Johnson to get him, it's not something that I like. He's a free agent at the end of 2025. Good strikeout numbers, and he throws hard from the left side, which is good. But giving up a Seth Johnson makes this a C plus for me for Baltimore. I think Philly gets an A minus. This is a guy who could potentially be a starter for them at the end of the year if they need a guy, or maybe some point next year as well too. He's 25 years old, 60 grade fastball, 55 grade slider, 65 innings so far in Double-A with 61 strikeouts and a 2.63 ERA. He's been good. He's been riddled somewhere in that top 10 of the Orioles prospect list for the past like 3 or 4 years now at this point. So I like it. Moving on, last trade that we got. But that doesn't mean the episode's going to be done. We still got a couple other things to talk about. Arizona, Washington. I didn't realize Dylan Floro was having this good of a year, but he goes to Arizona for Andres Chaparro.
Yeah, I got Arizona with a B plus here because Floro's been really good in Washington, going multiple innings consistently. That's always important, but it's probably not the thing that takes you over the edge. They got much, dire issues in the lineup right now. Washington, B minus. Andres Chaparro is a power hitter in Reno right now, that crazy Reno team, but he's 25. Maybe someone to keep an eye on. I think it's a pretty fair trade, though.
Yeah. I give Arizona a B plus. They did good to get a reliever who's got an ERA in the low twos on a rental price. And Chaparro going back to Washington. I know he's already 25, but I think Washington gets an A because this is another dude that they just got out of nowhere in Floro and flipped him for a prospect that has big league potential. 137 WRC plus in the minors this year, 19 homers. And if he becomes a guy, say in 2 or 3 years when Washington's good and he's, the eighth or ninth man in their lineup that can play, third base for you every now and then, or a corner outfield or DH, and he's, got an OPS near 8, that's going to work out really well for you. So I give it an A. All right. We got through 43 trades. We've only been doing this for an hour and a half, but we only got about 5 more minutes, I'd say, maybe a bit more. We'll go right into deadline winners and losers, and then we'll go into the Olympic basketball check-in if you want to do that. So deadline winners, Skyler. I have a couple honorable mentions and then 2 teams I want to talk about. I'll let you go first, though.
All right. I have, for winners, 3 teams I wrote down here specifically. The Padres for going all in on those relievers. The Cardinals, like just making sure you have the depth, because if guys start getting hurt, the whole thing was for nothing. And Kansas City going after some big pitching value.
Yeah. I'll start off with my actual winners, and then I'll go into my honorable mentions because it kind of just flows better that way. 2 Florida teams, Tampa Bay, ton of prospects. Brody Hopkins, Jackson Bellmeister, Matthew Etzel, Dylan Lesko, Homer Bush. They got Christopher Morel, Hunter Biggie, Ty Johnson, P. Michael Flynn, and Daniel Carlson, or not Daniel Carlson, Dylan Carlson. I think they did a good job on maximizing the stuff that they got back. And then Miami, Davidson De Los Santos, Augustin Ramirez, Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers, Robbie Snelling out of Missouri. They just got a ton of hitters back, which is exactly what they need. And I think for Peter Bendix, you sound like a fucking nerd, but you are a nerd, and you did a great job this deadline. Honorable mentions, Toronto. I think they did good at getting rid of their talent and getting some, good minor leaguers back. And then the one buyer that I think did good was San Diego because they just did a ton of stuff, which is awesome. Yeah. Deadline losers, Skyler, who do you got?
We'll start off with the White Sox. They really should have gotten rid of everyone before any major injuries happened, especially Garrett Crochet. I mean, that's a ticking time bomb right now. Minnesota, they watched everyone around them get better, even though they didn't make any poor moves. I think it's on the watch list of, that's why they didn't get better in the second half. And the Astros, I think they got rid of two prospects they probably should have held on to. I'll have an honorable mention. I guess we'll throw it in at the end here. The Dodgers, they have the capability to go after anybody they want. Flaherty should be solid, great fit. We'll talk about him for the rest of the season, but I don't know. A lot of injuries, man, for the Dodgers.
Yeah. I will start off with Garrett Crochet. I'm not going to be as hard on the White Sox because it seemed like it was more of a Crochet thing doing it to himself that caused him to not be traded. He demanded that whoever trades for him signs him to an immediate extension, and he's also not going to pitch in the postseason this year as well too, is what he said, to limit his innings to keep him healthy. And I think that kind of just was a turnoff for like the Dodgers and some of these other teams that were looking for him. It just sucks for the White Sox that it turned out that way because it's the White Sox, and that would have been, if all things went well, would have been probably one of the biggest highest nets. If you think the Miami got a lot for Trevor Rogers, Jackson Holliday might have been on his way to Chicago if they wanted that to happen. Regardless, I left them off my losers. The three teams that I have are the Twins because they didn't do jack shit. And I talked about this last week where we said that they need to buy as much as the Guardians did. And the Guardians got Lane Thomas, they got Alex Cobb, and the Twins, I want to say they got Trevor Richards or something like that. That's the only guy that they got. But that's just like, come on now. The Phillies, I like getting Estevez, but they gave up way too much. My next note is Austin Hayes with 4 question marks after it because even though he hit a homer tonight, he's not the solution if you wanted to tax him. Yeah, it's just like, what the fuck? And they also give up Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto, 2 pretty reliable relievers in their bullpen. Like, why? Like, it's just to Baltimore. Yeah, it's both of them and separate trades. And the last team I have is the Angels. I like what they got back from Estevez, but they didn't trade the guys that they needed to trade in order to make their farm system decent so they have a decent future and not just rotting away. Why is Tyler Anderson on your team? Why is Kevin Pillar on your team? Why is Taylor Ward on your team? And why is Luis Renifo on your team? Trade those guys, man. Like, what are you going to do now for the next 3 or 4 years? Are you signing Juan Soto this upcoming year? Is Shohei Ohtani coming back in the time portal? Is Mike Trout eventually just going to be healthy for the next 6 years? No. Like, trade Trout. I don't know. Like, come on. Like, there's things you got to do to make your team better. And they just, besides the Estevez trade, didn't do anything. And I feel like that's the Phillies just fucking it up for them. Anyways. All right. Olympic basketball check-in. I'll let you work here, Scott.
Yeah, we've been here for a while, so I'll keep it short and sweet. We'll start off with Team USA leading Group C so far. A big win against Jokic's Serbians the other day, and a big win against South Sudan tomorrow would help them advance to the next round easily. Pretty weak group. The next group is led by Germany and France. That's Group B. Both squads have 2-0 records, and their matchup later this week is going to be awesome. Wemby against the Germans would be cool. And finally, Group A has been mostly dominated by Canada so far, led by SGA. But that Australian team, not too far behind. I believe 2 per group will move on. And I think we are going to get the best 6 teams moving on. At least that's what it looks like so far. No upsets, really.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the top 2, and then there's 2 wild cards, I want to say, to make it 8 total teams that move on, I want to say. I think that's what I heard. That might be for soccer. It might be the same thing. Who knows? But that's just what I've been hearing per sources.
All right. I'm excited to see what we got for Sudan, man.
Yeah. Shout out to Lou Aldang, by the way. I heard that he completely funds all of South Sudan's things, like all their jerseys, all their hotels, all their travel, all the courts that they play on and stuff. So I guess shout out to the Lakers for giving him that crazy contract. But shout out to Lou Aldang, cool, childhood vet for us. Next up, our Layups poll predictions. 2 for 4 this past week, which isn't too bad. I had Pittsburgh money line on Tuesday. That did not happen since we did the episode on Monday. We were able to bet on Tuesday. And Skylar had Oakland over the Angels on Friday. That did happen. Part of a good 4-game series for the A's in LA. This week, I have the Kansas City Royals over the Chicago White Sox on Wednesday. the Chicago White Sox have not won since July 5th. There's been a lot of things that have happened since then. Donald Trump got shot. Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. Garrett Crochet is somehow still a White Sox, and they're still not winning. They're currently up right now, but I assume that they're going to choke that. Regardless of whatever happens, I think they lose tomorrow to the Royals.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going with Friday night, the Minnesota Twins and Big Joe Ryan taking down the White Sox. They've been on pace for being the worst baseball team probably ever assembled above high school.
Yeah. I will give a shout out to the White Sox about something, because that's a stadium that I also went to this past week.
Yeah.
And I always heard from all the Cubs fans when we said that we were going to White Sox game as well too, they're like, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Like all this stuff. We get to the ballpark, walk around. It's a great stadium. I think the only problem is that it just gets shadowed by where it is, because it's in a terrible area, and that Wrigley's the other stadium in the city. Like it just gets shadowed by those things. The White Sox, you do have a great stadium. It's doesn't stand out at all, but it's still a cool, ballpark to go to. Especially when you don't give up 8 runs in the first inning, like what happened when I was there. Next up, bold prediction. Mets money line on Tuesday was mine. That went green. That was against the Yankees, and the Mets ended up sweeping the Yankees on the season series by a whole lot of runs. And Skyler had Atlanta over the Mets, which did not happen on Friday. I want to say they split that series, a 4-gamer, I want to say. But unfortunately, that game for Skyler did not go our way. This week, I have Colorado over the Angels on a Wednesday. Probably not going to be a crazy bold prediction, maybe like plus 110 or whatever. Kyle Freeland start. I like the Colorado lineup over the Angels.
Yeah, I'm going also on Friday night here against the other team from Chicago. Big Chicago episode today, because I got the Cardinals and newly acquired pitcher Eric Fetty in his first start to win against the Cubs. That's Assad. He's having a great year, but I like the odds here. St. Louis is they're feeling themselves a little bit, and Chicago's kind of trending downwards. So I like St. Louis here.
Yeah. That's going to do it, though, for episode 203.
Man.
It was a long one, but you always got to prepare for these long episodes when you get to the trade deadline. We will see you guys next week, though, for episode 204. You had any further shout-outs or anything, Skyler?
One more year of Rooker and Miller, at least, right?
Oh, yeah. Rooker, Miller, 2028, baby. Come on now.
All right. We'll be back next Tuesday.
Go Waves.